I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Let's begin with a story about Measure 110. The idea of treating drug addiction as a medical or social problem and not as a criminal problem, it's very appealing to a lot of people. That's why I voted for it. But here in Oregon, it hasn't really worked out the way many of us expected. Still, the idea is spreading, most recently to Canada, and that's our big story tonight. On January 31st, British Columbia, in an attempt to get ahead of its drug use problem, joined Oregon decriminalizing user amounts of hard drugs. British Columbia covers the most western segment of Canada and includes the big city of Vancouver. The decriminalization is part of a multi-pronged approach to try and cut down on the high number of deaths there connected to drugs. As the new law there was taking place at the end of January, a network crew from CBC News, that's Canada's national news outlet, they paid a visit to Portland to see what the future might hold. Here's how their report began.
This is Portland, Oregon, 2 years after decriminalizing personal amounts of hard drugs. The open drug use, the deaths, worse than ever.
Where are we here now?
This is Skidmore Fountain, which has been called Fentanyl Fountain by some of the folks that we've interacted with.
The reporter there on the story is Lindsay Ducombe. I caught up with her as she traveled to cover forest fires in the BC recently. When she was in Portland, she spent time downtown with police taking a look at the challenges that we face every day. She told me there were some obvious differences between Portland and Vancouver, BC, not so much in drug laws, but in the location of the drug use.
It's very interesting to compare the two cities, because I think one of the things that we noticed, and I was working with the producer, Georgie Smythe, and camera video producer, Andrew Lee, is that so many of the people who were using on the streets and living on the streets in Portland seem to be very spread out over a large region of the downtown, several blocks. Whereas in BC, or in Vancouver specifically, it certainly is more focused in geographically to a highly concentrated area in our downtown east side. Now, recently, a tent encampment was moved out by the city, so it has become more spread out, or at least runs the potential for that to happen as the fallout from that continues. But it was a different sort of interaction, because we did feel that it was block upon block upon block of seeing the real human suffering of addiction.
I thought that was an interesting difference. Hers very concentrated, ours kind of spread out. She told me she'd been briefed on how much drug use there was in our city, so that wasn't a big surprise when she got here. She rode along with Officer David Bayer in downtown and saw the open drug markets of Portland for herself.
See this guy right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, watch this.
What's he doing?
He's probably smoking fentanyl. See that?
Yeah.
And we're like, we're in what's basically a police car. It's unmarked, but like, we're pretty obviously the police. Hi there, put that knife away, please. What are you smoking?
Betty.
Okay, just
Yeah.
powder fentanyl?
Yeah.
Is that what you drop right there?
Yeah.
Right there?
Yeah.
Can you pick that up so someone else doesn't find it, or a kid doesn't find that, please?
Lindsay, the Canadian reporter, said it all seemed very routine for the police.
Narcan. Hey, we gotta go.
Okay.
My partner's calling me, asking for Narcan.
Okay.
And that means
Someone's overdosing.
overdosing.
Yeah, you just asked for it on the radio.
How often does this happen?
Every day.
But still, 2 people a day die from drug overdoses in Oregon. British Columbia's death toll is 3 times that. Decriminalization hasn't brought those numbers down.
Chase, wake up, buddy. There you go. Thanks.
Now I can send you.
He's gotten Narcan 4 milligrams in the left nostril.
In the first year, opioid overdose deaths rose 52%.
It's amazing video, I think. Emergency workers on the scene said that same person had been revived from another overdose just the day before. Meanwhile, the CBC also covered the first day of decriminalization in British Columbia on January 31st. They found many were unaware of the new law on the streets. The network also pointed out that police had generally stopped arresting anyone for having small amounts of drugs back in 2020. British Columbia is the first province to decriminalize in Canada. Toronto is requesting the same permission. The Minister of Mental Health and Addiction said it's a good move.
We will be able to reduce the stigma, the fear and shame that keep people who use drugs silent about their use or using alone, and help more people access life-saving supports and treatment.
Sound familiar? So how's it going up there? Well, it's a bit difficult to tell since one of the main goals is just to reduce the stigma around drug use. But last week I bumped into a Canadian tourist while I was out doing a story on Portland's downtown. Turns out he lives just outside the city of Vancouver, and he does see the same problems there still that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I think we're really dealing with a lot of the same issues. But yeah, it's just, Abbotsford, it's gotten really bad. There's huge homeless population. It's just drugs. It's the drugs, the fentanyl, and then because they need the cash, they crime, they get the drugs, they're homeless, crime, drugs, home. You know what I mean? And they don't seem to be worried about getting them off the drugs. They're just trying to keep them not from dying.
So there you have it. British Columbia has decriminalized small amounts of street drugs, and it will stay that way for the next 3 years until January 31st, 2026. Now, while we're talking about drugs, Portland-based DHM Research is out with new polling on Measure 110. They found that 51% of voters believe it has been bad for Oregon. They also found most voters believe 110 has made drug addiction, homelessness, and crime worse in Oregon, and that 63% would support bringing back criminal penalties for drug possession while keeping the funding for treatment. And 59% of the voters think the root cause of homelessness is drug addiction and mental health issues, not a lack of affordable housing. The DHM survey was conducted during the last week of April. They polled 500 people from around the state. The results have a margin of error plus or minus 4.5%. Well, those poll results are out just as Portland police are warning the public about a potentially very bad batch of drugs being bought and sold on our streets. 8 people died from suspected drug overdoses between 11:30 Friday morning and 4:30 Sunday afternoon. Here's a map showing where each overdose happened. You'll notice there are only 7 points on the map there, and that's because one case involved 2 men inside an apartment. Police tell us it appears the victims believed they were taking cocaine, but it turned out to be a blend of coke and fentanyl, or possibly even pure powdered fentanyl. In at least 6 of the 8 cases, police say it is likely fentanyl is to blame, with more testing needed in the other 2. The medical examiner's office is teaming up with Portland Police Bureau's Narcotics and Organized Crime Unit to investigate the deaths now. 2 of those suspected overdose deaths, by the way, downtown Portland. Last week, we devoted an entire show to downtown, the good, the bad, the ugly. And several of you say open drug use is the #1 thing that needs to get taken care of.
The one thing that's happening downtown that needs to change is fentanyl, the drugs. Measure 110, until fentanyl is taken care of, crime will stay high and downtown will not be safe. I go down there, I love it, I love Portland, but until fentanyl is stopped, it won't be safe.
Sandy wrote to us, "We don't come to Portland because it's uncomfortable. We worry about safety, where we can leave our car without it being stolen, walking around homeless folks and stepping over feces on the sidewalks. Why go somewhere that makes you uncomfortable? If we want to enjoy music, art, or museums, we fly to a safe city. Portland is not safe." During our downtown show, we spoke with City Commissioner Dan Ryan for his thoughts on the state of the city now and what should be done moving forward. If you'd like to watch the full segment, you should. You can find it right now on the KGW YouTube channel. But many of you say current city leadership is actually the problem.
I live in downtown, and I have to tell you, your interview with Dan Ryan proved, at least to me, that he was saying a lot of nothing and not really telling us in concrete terms what plans were in place to take care of exactly what problem. Anyone can talk generalities, and that's exactly what Dan Ryan does so well. I am very unconvinced by his arguments that the city will bounce back. I feel that he's one of the reasons it hasn't. Thanks.
Larry emailed us last week and said, Pat, your story makes me sad and angry at the same time. Amidst all that's going on, why is Portland's elected leadership so ineffective? Is it our form of government? Also, why are our police so disengaged? I used to work downtown and it's not the same as it used to be. I truly hope we get some ideas that work. Even with some of you thinking that Portland is already too far down the drain, we did get several messages filled with hope for the Rose City. Wendy told us, am a hardcore rocker granny, punker, and never feel uncomfortable downtown. I style whoever I can with any change and am kind to all. The music and arts in Portland are revelatory. We own 2 creative businesses here. Don't listen to the hype. We rule. Celebrate this wonderful place. And Janet chimed in. I have hope for downtown. Not what it used to be, but what we are transforming into. We've got this. And let's end with a note from Dan, who tells us that he lives downtown with his wife. Our city is going through some things, but 3 years of lazy headlines, absurd social media posts, peanut gallery bluster, and scapegoating whomever, it's killing us. Enough already. Seems people need to put their grown-up pants on and live a little. There's only one downtown. Fear isn't the answer. It's a great time to be Portland proud. Rip City, baby. Up next on the story, the Republican walkout in the Oregon Senate continued today, with 3 senators reaching the new threshold of 10 unexcused absences, meant to bar them from running for re-election. Hear from one of those senators on why he's not showing up for work, plus the future of Measure 113, which set that unexcused absent threshold. That's all next, when the story returns. Oregon Senate Republicans continued their walkout today, preventing the state Senate from doing any work. It's the 10th day of walkouts at the Capitol, and 3 Oregon senators have now hit that magic number that disqualifies them from running for re-election. That's thanks to Measure 113, which voters overwhelmingly passed back in November in an effort to stop walkouts just like this. But now Republicans are saying they could challenge that measure in court. Evan Watson explains.
Absent: Anderson, Bonham, Boquist, Finley, Hansel, Hayden, Knope, Linthicum, Robinson, Brock-Smith, Thatcher, Weber. 16 ayes.
The call is removed.
For a 10th time this session, Senate President Rob Wagner addressed a half-empty room.
It is now apparent that we again lack a quorum today.
Except this time, Republican state senators who have walked out in protest are starting to face consequences for their actions.
And it is a clear directive from Oregonians to their elected representatives to show up to work and do their constitutional duty.
Oregon voters passed Measure 113 in November, a constitutional amendment that disqualifies lawmakers from running for another term in the future if they reach 10 unexcused absences. It was designed to discourage walkouts like this one. 3 Oregon senators reached 10 unexcused absences on Monday. Republican Dennis Linthicum from Klamath Falls, Independent Brian Boquist from Polk and Yamhill counties, and Republican Daniel Bonham from the Dalles.
If they tell me that I can't, I'd love to see what a court says about that.
Bonham says he's willing to risk his future in the Senate to make a stand against House Bill 2002, a bill on reproductive health care and gender-affirming care. Specifically, Bonham believes parents should be notified if someone 14 or younger decides to get an abortion.
I'm willing to take a stand. I'm willing to not come back to the Senate. I'm more than happy to lose my job if it means I can stop this bill from happening.
And he believes Republicans will continue their walkouts and test Measure 113 in court.
My expectation is at least 11 of us will hit 10 days. Yeah, there may be 2 that we continue to have come to the floor to be a mouthpiece for the group.
Wagner said lawmaker walkouts can't be accepted.
There is still time for senators to come back and do their job. 41 days before the end of the 2023 legislative session. The work continues. Committees meet. Budgets are being discussed.
While some Republicans have said the walkouts are tied to an Oregon law focused on the readability of bills, Democrats have echoed Bonham, saying that the walkouts have been planned to stop the passage of new laws on abortion, gender-affirming care, and gun safety. Republicans don't have the numbers to vote these bills down. Meanwhile, the work is mounting.
And we have a stack of bipartisan bills lined up for second readings and third readings for votes on this floor.
Evan Watson, KGW News.
Thanks, Evan. By the way, Evan had more comments from Senator Bonham that he couldn't get into his report, but because we know you like deep dives, we're going to share some more of his comments. I think it's important because understanding the mindset of these lawmakers who might be throwing away a chance to serve a next term is really important to get a sense of where this all goes next. And we care about that because until this walkout is fixed, billions of dollars affecting hundreds of thousands of people are in limbo. Bonham seemed to know this was going to happen.
I always knew for me personally that 2002 was going to be something that I would be willing to compromise this job for. That said, I think it's different for everybody. We've got 13 members that are making this stand together. I don't think we all had one issue that we absolutely aligned on and said that's the thing that's going to keep me from going.
One of the things that's now clear, though, is Republicans like Bonham are willing to challenge Measure 113, either the law directly or who decides unexcused absences and what the criteria is for that.
And you may not be able to say that ballot Measure 113 is a viable law once it's challenged in court. And I do think that that's going to be the case. That said, I'm more than willing to not serve in office again and take this stand. And I think Oregonians, by and large, will agree with the stand that I'm taking.
Well, maybe the voters in your district will agree with the stand, but I'm not sure that everyone in the state does. Bonham also said he's against the part of the bill in House Bill 2002 that allows children 14 and under to get an abortion without their parents' permission. And with his walkout, he's telling us Republicans want that changed, and they are being ignored.
About what did the voters say when they said we want ballot Measure 113 to be in place? I think they said stay and do the job. But I also have a feeling that they believe that that is in a bipartisan manner, that somehow the minority voices are engaged with.
And that's the thing. All right, here's my opinion on this. First, at least Bonham is dropping the nonsense about the bill summaries being readable. If you missed it, that's been the Republicans' main excuse for the walkout, and it's a bunch of baloney. Second, remember when I went to Eastern Oregon and talked with people about how they feel ignored out there? Well, the big cities, the Portland area, for example, they have all the political power and control. Eastern Oregon and a bunch of other rural places in this great state disagree with the agendas of the big city politicians, but they have no political power. Nothing they can do in the legislature really to stop any of it. Now, this walkout would not happen if Oregon had a Senate like the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that's not possible, but just consider it as I make my point here. If each county in Oregon had one representative of our state Senate, Republicans would have a huge majority, I think, in the Senate. Democrats would continue to control the House. That means that compromise would have to rule the day to get anything done. Instead, the way it is now, Democrats rule both chambers and the governor's office, and they're able to ram through their priorities no matter what. And here's the outcome. Here's something that might work. The Oregonian editors called for it over the weekend, and I agree. If the Republicans are willing to die on the hill of parental notification and permission, then Democrats should set up something called the judicial bypass in House Bill 2002. That's a system that's common in other states where teens younger than 15 are not allowed to get abortions without their parents' okay. It allows the child to ask a judge for permission. That way the child has another avenue if the parents are dangerous or whatever. If Democrats agreed to that, both sides would get what they wanted, and the business of Oregon might be able to continue, at least in theory. It's time for the big egos to get out of the way and compromise to become a priority. I mean, I don't expect that to happen, but I think that it should for all of us. That's my opinion anyway. What's yours? You don't have to agree with me. Send me an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Still to come on The Story, we'll take a little break from conflict and politics to bring you a story about hope and family. An Alaska man who was in need of a heart transplant missed his chance over the winter because of a flight cancellation. But his persistence, faith, and desire for more time with his young kids paid off. Grab those tissues or blame your tears on allergies. That's coming up on The Story.
Straight ahead at 6:30, tragedy on the Oregon coast. What we're learning this evening about the Mountainside High School senior who went swimming with friends and didn't come back. Also ahead, a massive landslide takes out the highway to Mount St. Helens and strands a dozen people overnight. How rescue teams managed to get them out. Plus, a setback for the Schnitz. Why a hotter than usual summer concert season for the venue isn't actually a good thing. That's next at 6:30. Hope to see you then.
Remember that little ice storm we all had back in December that brought western Washington and Oregon to a grinding halt? Videos like this went viral, cars after cars sliding down hills. But for one man from Alaska, the storm was life-changing. His flight to Seattle to get a new heart was one of hundreds that were canceled. After missing out on the transplant that he was scheduled to get, he said, listen, I'm not missing another one. Well, he finally got his new heart. Julie Calhoun caught up with him as he was getting ready to finally head home.
Before this, I could do 2 laps around our kitchen counter, our little island, and I was done chasing my kid.
Patrick Holland given a new heart and lease on life.
And when I get home, I'm going to chase the crap out of him on the playground. So it's emotional because I didn't have it.
Patrick is a father of 7 from North Pole, Alaska. We first met Patrick when his flight was canceled from Fairbanks to Seattle during an unprecedented ice storm, grounding all flights in and out of SeaTac, ultimately losing an opportunity for a heart transplant.
I think I cried more that day than I have in my life, and had exerted every emotion that I've never had.
Fast forward a few months later, and he's recovering in Seattle with a new heart.
Oh my gosh, I can't even explain it. It's like literally dying and someone saying, here's a new life.
But the road here has been filled with ups and downs. For Patrick, heart disease ran in his family, and he was ultimately diagnosed with congestive heart failure at 39. After 3 pacemakers, major bypass surgery, and other procedures, he was put on the transplant list at 57.
My life has been slowly taken away every 6 months, every heart attack, every cardiac arrest. You lose another part of you.
After missing the first chance at a new heart, he wasn't going to let that happen again, and came to Seattle in January to wait for the next call.
And I got another call. And then it's like, lay down everything. And I told everybody, sorry, gotta go. And we got there, and then that heart had a sickness. They couldn't tell me what it was.
That would happen 2 more times. Then the phone rang again on March 30th.
But the 5th one, he goes, you got an hour and a half to get here. This one is perfect for you. Doctor looked at me and he said, I'll see you when you wake up. And it felt good. And I woke up. And I have this new heart, and it's pounding with authority.
Patrick had a post-op scare with internal bleeding and didn't think he'd make it.
There's genuine happiness running through here that's just, it's a gift from God for sure. And believe what you want to believe, it's a gift. You know, it's a miracle. I'm going to help a lot of people with this heart.
Oh, what a sweet story. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching, and remember, the story, our story, that never ends. Don't forget to vote tonight, by the way, if you haven't already. The election's tomorrow. Come on. In the meantime, stick around for the news at 6:30. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.